Shri Gurubhyo Namaha, Vanakkam, Namaste. We are here in another episode of the Azadi ka Amrit Mahotsav. And we shall see the heroes of our nationalist movement. We shall first see the life of a very young revolutionary. He was born on the 3rd of December 1889 and died on the 11th of August 1908. Just see, 1889 to 1908, barely 19 years of age. And that was Khudiram Bose. He was born in a small village at Bengal. Khudiram is a very different name. Khud means grains. And why was he called Khudiram? His parents were Trilokyanath and Lakshmi Priya. They had daughters, but their elder two sons died as infants. So, this infant, when this small little child was born, the third son of the family was born, this infant was sold to a relative in exchange of 3 handfuls of grains. He was sold for grains, for khud, and that is why he was called Khudiram. But remember, he gave himself to the cause of the country. He lost his mother when he was 6 years of age and lost the father also when he was 7 years of age. When in school, he happened to attend the lectures of Arbind and Sister Nivedita. His village was very close to Midnapur. And since the parents were dead, he came into the custody of his eldest sister. And the sister's husband took him to a school in Midnapur. And that is where, while studying in Midnapur, he was attracted to the thoughts of Sister Nivedita and Arbind Ghosh. And that was all in 1902 and 1903, just about when he was 13, 14 years of age. He was inspired by these talks and joined the Anushilan Samiti. Anushilan Samiti was one of those revolutionary organizations, youth organizations, wherein the members were involved in spreading awareness about the nationalist struggle and taking part in several activities which would inform the British about the intention of the Indian people. While in the Anushilan Samiti, he came in contact with Barindranath Ghosh, the younger brother of Arbind Ghosh. Thus, while he was in his teens itself, he developed revolutionary ideas and slowly got into the jobs of the activities of Anushilan Samiti, like distributing pamphlets about nationalist ideas. His involvement in the activities of the Samiti and going around and telling people about the national movement, distributing pamphlets, all this arose a kind of suspicion in the minds of the police, and the police started surveilling this particular boy. However, Khudiram continued to do his activities and was in contact with other revolutionary members. At about this time, the members of the various revolutionary organizations felt Magistrate Douglas Kingsford should be in some way or the other taught a lesson. Why so? Magistrate Douglas Kingsford was a district magistrate and was based at Alipore. And whenever cases wherein Indian nationals were involved were brought to him, his approach itself was very hard. His treatment of Indian nationals was something beyond words. Ugandar activists were often punished with rigorous imprisonment. Ugandar activists were only political prisoners, and by law they should not be subjected to rigorous imprisonment. Kingsford was notorious for such kind of punishment. A small little boy who participated in an agitation against the British was brought to the court. And you know what kind of punishment did Magistrate Douglas Kingsford accord on him? Whiplashes on a boy of 16 years of age. Such activities, such kind of an approach had made the youth feel that Kingsford deserved some revenge. They were waiting for opportunities, trying to find out as to what his movements were and all that. In fact, the British police also knew that Douglas Kingsford's life itself was at stake. So, they transferred him to Muzaffarpur. Earlier, Prafulla Chaki and Hemachandra, two revolutionaries, planned. They procured appropriate detonator and gunpowder and wanted to kill Douglas Kingsford. But they were not able to do it in a particular occasion. And there were also one or two other failed attempts. However, Prafulla Chaki and Khudiram Bose decided to take the plan forward. They had the support of their friends and activists. Khudiram took to the name of Haren Shankar and Prafulla became Dinesh Chandra, and in these two guised names, they went about looking out for the details of Kingsford's movements as to where he'll go, where he'll stay, what he'll do and all that. They surveyed the entire area for about 3 weeks. There was police intelligence that Kingsford could be at danger. However, the police tried looking out for different ways and methods, tried finding out if somebody had insinuated to do something. They were not able to find out. Haren and Dinesh were for this purpose. In fact, they were asked to search for Prafulla Chaki and Khudiram Bose and Hemchandra and all that. However, they could not relate these two names with those names, and then the police agent sent a report to the superintendent of police saying that the boys have not arrived at Muzaffarpur. The boys who had tried something earlier had not arrived at Muzaffarpur, and Kingsford was fairly safe. However, these boys were there, surveying the entire area for about 3 weeks, trying to find out as to what the magistrate does. And they found out Douglas Kingsford would go to the European club and play bridge almost every evening. He would go to the club, remain in the club for a particular point of time, particular hours of time, and then depart from there. And as magistrate, he would come out of the club and then get into a carriage, and the carriage would move to the magistrate's house. So they had seen all this, and they decided when the carriage emerges out, they would throw a bomb. They had the detonator, they had the gunpowder, they had made the bomb. So on the 30th of April, 1908, they went to the park in front of the club. In fact, they had gone there on the 29th also. They were spotted in the park by a police constable, and they pretended as schoolboys as though they were talking something, and they left the area. When they went the next day, the same constable saw them and tried coming near, but then they kind of hid themselves behind the trees, escaped his attention, and waited for the carriage to emerge out. On that day, Douglas Kingsford and his wife played bridge with one Mrs. Kennedy and her daughter. Mr. Kennedy was a barrister, and the barrister's wife and daughter played bridge with the magistrate and his wife. These boys were waiting outside. After some time, the carriage emerged. They thought it was the magistrate's carriage. It was identical. But then this first carriage which emerged out, on which they threw the bomb, had the Kennedys inside. Kingsford was in the next carriage. The Kennedys were injured. The daughter died the same day. The mother died 2 days later. However, the boys tried escaping from there immediately. Prafulla escaped, boarded a train, but was caught in one of the stations when he got down to drink water. The police on duty in the train suspected something, looked at the distraught way Prafulla Chaki was found, and then had some suspicion, caught him, realized that he was the person, because by then the news had spread, he was the person involved in the incident, and took him back to Muzaffarpur. What happened to Khudiram? Khudiram ran and walked about 25 miles overnight. And sometime in the early morning, he stopped at a tea shop wanting to drink water, having walked almost 25 miles. There again, the tea shop people had some kind of suspicion on him. So when one of them came near, Khudiram sensed something and moved, but as he moved, one of the pistols that he had hidden in his dress fell down, and that showed him out. There was also a constable there, and the constable started checking him, and he had so much of ammunition, so much of gunpowder, so much of weaponry on him. There was no way that he could escape, and that was destiny. Khudiram accepted the responsibility of having killed the people in the carriage, thinking Prafulla might have escaped. He did not even know what was happening to Prafulla Chaki because both of them had fled by two different routes. What happened to Prafulla? In the train, in the railway station, we saw the constable, the police personnel on duty caught him, and he tried escaping. They were about to bring him back to Muzaffarpur. He tried escaping. He could not. He knew he cannot escape. So whatever pistol he had, he shot himself dead. All that they could bring back to Muzaffarpur was Prafulla Chaki's body. Meanwhile, Khudiram from the tea shop was being brought to Muzaffarpur, and when Khudiram was brought to Muzaffarpur, the same time Prafulla Chaki's body also arrived. Seeing Prafulla dead, Khudiram accepted the complete responsibility. The entire area, the railway station, Muzaffarpur railway station, was so crowded. And here goes the record. The record found in a newspaper, the newspaper that came out the next morning. This is from the old records of that newspaper. The railway station was crowded to see the boy, a mere boy of 18 or 19 years old, who looked quite determined. He came out of a first-class compartment and walked all the way. And like a cheerful boy who knows no anxiety, on taking his seat, the boy cheerfully cried, "Vande Mataram." The trial began on the 21st of May, 1908. There were several rounds of hearing. There were various kinds of letters threatening the police, threatening the judges. So the defense lawyers, Narendra Kumar and others, kind of tried telling, see, this is a 19-year-old boy and there are threatening letters coming to you, which means these letters are coming from elsewhere. He is all alone. So probably this boy is not involved at all. But then all that failed. The judgment came and it said Khudiram Bose should be hanged. And the judge, as he pronounced the judgment, looked at Khudiram Bose. Khudiram Bose smiled back at the judge. The judge, probably out of some kind of sympathy, asked him as to what he wanted. Khudiram said, I don't want anything. I can teach you bomb making. The courage at that point. I can teach you bomb making. He was lodged in the jail because the capital punishment had already been pronounced and after some time that would be executed. The defense lawyers, including Narendra Kumar, again met him, told him to go in for an appeal. He initially refused an appeal. However, when he was kind of told that he can continue to live, the capital punishment can be reduced to a life sentence and probably he can continue to live. He had a wishful thinking that if he could live, he could still contribute to the nation. Maybe he can serve the nation after serving the imprisonment. So he appealed. The bench dismissed the appeal and confirmed the life sentence on the 13th of July 1908. On the 11th of August 1908, on that fateful day, he smiled, Khudiram Bose smiled while walking to the gallows, smilingly embraced death. And on the screen you find the judgment that proclaims the death sentence on Khudiram Bose, signed and sealed by order of the High Court, it says. And there in that photograph, you find Khudiram Bose, young Khudiram Bose, who's there, standing calm and composed, even whilst he is being surrounded by policemen. Friends, as we think of Khudiram Bose, we do think of another person, another great man, who was arrested in the same trial. Of course, later acquitted, but then went on to become a great spiritual leader of this country. And that is Shri Arbind Ghosh. Born Arbind Ghosh on the 15th of August 1872 in Calcutta, he is now hailed Shri Aurobindo. He was born to Krishna Dan Ghosh, a medical doctor in the area. His mother was involved in Brahmo Samaj activities. However, the father thought English education was the best and so wanted to bring up the children in a kind of an English atmosphere. Only with the servants, the children were allowed to communicate in Hindustani, otherwise they were to speak only in English. And the father believed British culture was superior. Arbind Ghosh, along with his elder brothers, Binay Bhushan and Manmohan, was sent to the Loreto House School at Darjeeling so that they could develop their language skills and be away from the mother who was given to Indian culture. It was also that Krishna Ghosh wanted all his children to become members of the Indian civil service, at least the three elder sons. There was another younger sister by name Sarojini, and the younger brother of Arbind Ghosh was Barindranath Ghosh, whom we have seen before. To become members of the Indian civil service, it was necessary that they would have to study in England. So the entire family moved to England by 1879. The three brothers were placed under the care of Reverend Druitt in Manchester. And Druitt taught them history, Latin, French, geography, and arithmetic, and they attended the Manchester Grammar School. However, when Druitt had to emigrate to Australia, the brothers were placed under the charge of other teachers, and it is understood that after some years, Aurobindo developed a penchant for languages, and it is learnt that he was comfortable with at least 12 languages: English, French, and Bengali to speak, read, and write; Latin, Greek, and Sanskrit to read and write; Gujarati, Marathi, and Hindi to speak and read; and Italian, German, and Spanish to read. Soon the three brothers were also placed under the charge of one of the relatives of a Bengal ICS officer by name Henry Cotton. However, it so happened that Manmohan developed some literary interest and would not want to continue his preparation for ICS. And Binay Bhushan was not up to the mark. So the responsibility of fulfilling the father's wish fell only on Aurobindo Ghosh, and to become eligible or to become an ICS official, he had to undergo a competitive examination. Now came the difficulty to stay in England for 2 years and be under probation and study for 2 years. He required some kind of monetary resources. It so happened that he secured a scholarship at the King's College at Cambridge under recommendation of Mr. Oscar Browning. He passed the written ICS examination after a few months, ranked quite high, and then spent the next 2 years at King's College. However, when it came to the practical examination, Aurobindo played a trick. While he was preparing for the ICS, he felt his objective was the welfare of his country. He was able to see many things and understand many things, and India became the larger figure, not fulfilling the ICS wish of his father. So he deliberately went late to the horse riding practical examination. There used to be examinations on techniques of horse riding and so on, because ICS officials were supposed to move from one place to another on horses. There was not much of transportation as we see today. So they had to know horse riding. And Aurobindo Ghosh deliberately went late to the examination so that he would be failed and he would be disqualified for the service. Same time, the Maharaja of Baroda was traveling in England. And remember, he was under the charge, Aurobindo Ghosh was under the charge of one Mr. Cotton, who was a relative of the Bengal ICS officer Henry Cotton. So this Mr. Cotton took him to the Maharaja and arranged for him to be placed in the Baroda state service. So Aurobindo Ghosh left England for India, arriving in India in February 1893. In India, another weird thing happened. His father, Krishna Ghosh, was waiting to receive the son. the son who's now to join the Baroda State Service. He was waiting to receive the son. But somehow at Bombay, where he was waiting, present-day Mumbai, erstwhile Bombay, where the father was waiting, the father was misinformed by some of the agents that the ship in which Aurobindo was travelling had sunk off the coast of Portugal. So the father thought the son had died. Though a strict father, he was an affectionate father. He thought the son had died because the ship had sunk somewhere close to Europe. The father himself died hearing this news. However, Aurobindo had arrived in India. Father's death was a blow to him. Nevertheless, he joined the State Service of Baroda in 1893. He initially worked in the survey department of the government, the Department of Revenue subsequently, and then was moved to the Secretariat. He had to do different kinds of job. He was even teaching grammar and assisting in writing speeches for the Maharaja. Then, while in Baroda, while he was in the Baroda State Service after about 3-4 years, his penchant for languages became so high that he started teaching French language at the Baroda College. At the same Baroda College, he also became a vice principal, became a tutor for Bengali, and then also taught French. He studied more of Sanskrit while at Baroda. That is when he contributed several articles to the journal called Hindu Prakash and started taking active interest in the Indian national movement. He worked literally behind the scenes because the Baroda state administration, the Maharaja's administration, told him that he cannot directly be involved in Indian national activities. So he worked behind the scenes, kind of helped people, but then could not come out overtly. He was in contact with the revolutionary groups in Bengal and Madhya Pradesh. So he used to travel from Baroda to Bengal via Madhya Pradesh, and he was in contact with all the French groups in these 3 states. He came in close contact with Lokmanya Tilak and also with Sister Nivedita. He kept on travelling between the years 1897 and 1906. He kept on travelling between Baroda and Bengal and then gave guidance and counselling and information to all the young revolutionary activists of these regions. Sometime in 1906, soon after the partition of Bengal, he decided to move to Calcutta because he wanted to be with the members of his family, especially with his younger sister Sarojini and younger brother Barini. So he moved to Bengal, to Calcutta. However, meanwhile, before his permanent move to Calcutta, sometime in 1901, when he was commuting between Baroda and Bengal in a way, he married Mrinalini, the daughter of Bhupal Chandra Bose, a senior official in government service. Mrinalini was a wonderful companion to Aurobindo Ghosh. Aurobindo was 28 and Mrinalini was just about 14 at the time of marriage. Mrinalini died 17 years later, and I mention this here because she died during the 1918 influenza pandemic. Friends, last 2 years, the world has witnessed the COVID pandemic. When the COVID pandemic broke out in late 2019, early 2020, many people were referring to the 1918, 1919, 1920 influenza pandemic. It was called the Spanish flu. Mrinalini succumbed to influenza during that pandemic. In 1906, Aurobindo, having moved to Calcutta, was made the first principal of the National College of Calcutta. And this particular college was established to impart national education to Indian youth. In 1907, his political activities became more and more. And to get involved in more such activities, he resigned from the post of the principal. And Aurobindo was greatly influenced by the various revolutionary movements that happened in Europe and England. The French Revolution and so many other revolts in America and Italy, he read about all of them and was greatly attracted towards reading about these movements. However, publicly, he favored passive resistance and non-cooperation, but then in private, he was secretly supporting revolutionary activities. In a way, that was his preparation for an open revolt. His idea was, if the passive resistance or the non-cooperation fail, in case they fail, then there should be an open revolt, something on the lines of the French Revolution. So people should be prepared, at least some should be prepared for an open revolt. And he saw the revolutionary activities in which the youth were involved as preparatory activities for such an open revolt. With Barindranath's help, he established contacts with people like Bhagajatin and Surendranath Tagore, and was a kind of an advisor to several associations, including the Anushilan Samiti. In 1906, he attended the Indian National Congress meeting headed by Dadabhai Naoroji and committed himself to the objectives of Swaraj, Swadesh, boycott and national education. Dadabhai Naoroji gave this call to the nation. He said, Swaraj, Swadesh, boycott and national education. Swaraj, independence. Swadesh, use only Swadeshi goods. Boycott Videshi goods. And train everyone in national education to the cause of the nation. In 1907, during the Surat Congress, we all know there was a split, and Aurobindo Ghosh took to the sides of Balagangadhar Tilak. Between 1907 and 1908, he travelled extensively in the regions of Pune, Bombay and Baroda and kind of firmed up the support for the nationalist cause, mustered up a lot of efforts, gave a lot of speeches, made people aware of the nationalist activity. And then came the Alipore bomb case. What is this Alipore bomb case? Friends, We saw what happened to Khudiram Bose and Prafulla Chaki. Prafulla Chaki and Khudiram Bose threw the bomb on a bid to kill Magistrate Douglas Kingsford. Douglas Kingsford was at Alipore and subsequently transferred to Muzaffarpur. The trial for this case was at Alipore. So this case is usually referred to as the Alipore bomb trial or the Alipore bomb case, and also referred to as the Muzaffarpur conspiracy, the Murari-Pukur conspiracy, or even the Maniktola bomb case. Why so many names? And you know what the official title of this case is? The legal records? Emperor versus Arbind Ghosh and others. Emperor means the Emperor of Britain, the British Empire. In this particular case, Alipore bomb case or the killing of the Kennedys, Barindranath was suspected and Arbind Ghosh was also suspected. The reason, a few days before all this happened, the revolutionaries would meet at the Murari-Pukur garden house that belonged to the family, where Barin usually met with his friends. So they were discussing the attempts to kill Kingsford and others, other British officials or British personnel. So this particular garden house was always shadowed by the police, and the area was Maniktola, and that is the reason it was called the Murari-Pukur conspiracy at the garden house, and the Maniktola bomb case. It was all Prafulla Chaki and Khudiram Bose, but then, though Barin was in a way involved as someone who gave the guidance, Arbind Ghosh was also suspected and arrested. In this particular case, Chittaranjan Das was the lawyer for Arbind Ghosh. Arbind Ghosh was imprisoned and confined to solitary confinement in the Alipore jail. One other reason why this case has been called the Alipore case. He was in solitary confinement. Solitary confinement is a very, very disastrous, sad thing. No one to talk to. The prisoner cannot meet anyone. Kept in solitary confinement for almost a year. Because the entire incidents happened on the 30th of April 1908. The trial itself began in May 1908. But then Arbind Ghosh was in confinement until the 6th May 1909, when his defense counsel was able to establish that he had no direct contact and got him acquitted. During this period that he spent in the jail, his view of life changed radically. He had spiritual experiences. In fact, even while he returned to India from England, he returned to Baroda, you remember? Even those times, he had certain spiritual experiences. But while in jail, he claimed he was visited by Swami Vivekananda. Visited within quotes, in the sense It probably was not a physical visit, but then a soulful visit. He records, Aurobindo Ghosh records, "It is a fact that I was hearing constantly the voice of Vivekananda speaking to me for a fortnight in the jail in my solitary meditation and felt his presence." In his subsequent autobiographical notes, he said he felt a sense of calmness when he first came back to India, that is to Baroda. And he always felt calm in the motherland. He did not know anything about yoga at that time. Later on, he learnt a little yoga from one of his friends, and in 1907 or so, Barun introduced him to a yoga teacher, to a yogi. And Aurobindo was slowly drawn into the spiritual world. After the Alipore bomb trial, he decided to quit active politics, and then he moved to Pondicherry, a French colony at that time. There was another incident that happened. He withdrew from all political activities by 1910 and went and resided in the house of Motilal Roy. But then the British government was trying to charge sheet him. We should remember the British were trying to charge sheet someone on some ground, always thinking that such people were threats. They thought Aurobindo was a threat. Given his earlier contacts with the revolutionaries and his involvement with the revolutionary outfits, he was considered a threat. And he also is supposed to have contributed some articles to Karma Yogi journal. So they kind of prosecuted him for sedition on the basis of an article which was entitled "To My Countrymen" and published in Karma Yogi. However, Aurobindo had disappeared. He had gone into hiding in the house of Motilal Roy, and the arrest warrant was held back because of he being in hiding. Then slowly he decided that he would move to Pondicherry. So on the day when the British police opened action on that particular warrant, he had already landed at Pondicherry, which was a French territory, and nothing could be done after that. The warrant was subsequently withdrawn. In Pondicherry, Aurobindo Ghosh dedicated himself to all his spiritual and philosophical pursuits. And today, he is hailed Sri Aurobindo, who put back India's position of spiritual supremacy in the world map. Aurobindo's contribution to the cause of the nation was not only during the period of the national struggle, but continues to glorify India, continues to guide Indians even today. As we celebrate the 75th year of Indian independence, we remember all these people and we hoist the national tricolour. We salute the national flag and we salute all those heroes and heroines, of course, of the national movement. Friends, we've been able to see the lives of some of these men and women. But the list is not complete. Let us remember there had been many more of them. Many, many more. Some of their names were known to us. There probably were many more contributors whose names had not come out to the limelight at all, or names which are not even remembered. But their contribution cannot be underestimated. Each one of them has given his or her best. They had lost property, they had lost status, they had lost education, they had lost relatives and friends, they had lost their lives. They had lost all these things, not because they wanted to lose them just like that, but they knew all that they lost was a kind of a manure for the Indian soil to flourish, for the Indian produce to flourish. Arbind Ghosh was born on the 15th of August. What a kind of coincidence. Do we call this coincidence? Or do we say it was Bharat Mata's vision? She wanted one of her sons to have his glorious birthday coincide with the day of her independence. Every time we see the national tricolor, we would and we should remember not only Arbind Ghosh, but all of them. All of them. Think of them and respectfully thank them for what they have given us. You and me are what we are today. We are able to breathe freedom. We are able to live freedom primarily because these men and women have contributed to the cause of national struggle, to the cause of national education, and to the cause of national upliftment. Friends, let's rejoice Azadi ka Amrit Mahotsav. And let us remember what we started with. Amrit is nectar. Amrit is honey. Amrit gives life. And this Amrit Mahotsav gives life to all of us, gives life to all children of Bharat Mata to continue to strive and work towards the cause of the nation. Let us see that Bharat Mata comes out a Vishwa Guru by 2047 when she celebrates the 100th year of her glorious independence. Jai Hind.